Hear, hear. Hear, hear. Hear, hear. Parkinson's Podcast. Welcome to the Hear, Hear Parkinson's Podcast, where you will hear from special guests covering the world of Parkinson's with a deep dive on the World Parkinson Congress and a look at how the WPC has helped make extraordinary progress in the Parkinson's community by creating space for people with Parkinson's to have a seat at the table.
Hello there. We are back with a new episode of the Hear Hear podcast for the Parkinson Congress leading up to, from now, whenever now is when you are listening to us, until we see each other in Phoenix in May 26. And my co-pilot here on this voyage is none other than Eli Pollard. Welcome, Eli.
Hi, everyone. Glad to be here, Edgar.
Good, good. This actually reminds me of a smash hit by the Pointer Sisters from back when, whenever it's called I'm So Excited, because we have a long string of guests coming into these podcast episodes every other week. And first one out is Roger Barker. Welcome, Roger.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm not a Pointer Sister, though, I'll tell you that.
No, but maybe you could be. Actually, that's the only thing I can't see on your CV. It's quite long, and I thought, well, if I start commenting on this, then we might digress and be off on the wrong foot altogether. And so I'd rather give it over to you. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself, Roger, in, say, 65 seconds or so? A good minute?
Yep, so I'm
Roger Barker.
Currently based in Cambridge in the United Kingdom, where I'm a neurology consultant. So I see many people with Parkinson's amongst other neurological problems. I also do research both in the lab and in the clinic around Parkinson's and Huntington's. And my history is that I became very interested in neurology when I was an undergraduate many years ago. I then, on the back of that, wanted to study neurology. And I came to Cambridge many years ago to undertake a PhD studying brain repair in Huntington's, which has been the area which has been a particular interest to me, how we can put new cells into the brain and repair things that are missing and damaged in Parkinson's. So that's been where I've been for many years. I've traveled around in my career. I worked in London for a while, both before I specialized in neurology and subsequently. And here I am, and I've been here now for many, many years.
And what is your direct connection then with the World Parkinson Congress?
So the WPC, I've had a very long relationship with WPC. So, I mean, my first encounter with it was back in around 2006 when I was invited to talk in Washington. I've been to every meeting since then. I was very fortunate to be invited onto the sort of directors around 2010, I think, something like that. I then had the pleasure of the program director for the Kyoto meeting in 2019, which was a serious undertaking, which Eli never told me how much work that would be. And then I became the vice president. And then since 2023, I've become the president of the WPC, and my tenure will end in Phoenix, Arizona in 2026.
We will have to let Roger go at some point, but we would keep you as long as we could if we were allowed.
I was a young man when I started with the WPC.
We're like 16. We pulled you in.
Yeah, it aged me.
So, Roger, you've been coming to the WPC for so long. It may not be even easy to pinpoint exactly some very specific things, but how did the WPC, change your perspective, or did it change your perspective on sort of Parkinson's, both professionally and personally? Like, how has it influenced you in the work that you do?
But I would say the biggest change, and the most obvious change from the very first meeting was the involvement of all stakeholders. So up to that, I was quite junior at that point, but every meeting I went to was essentially either populated by clinicians or by scientists, or a combination thereof. And the patient involvement was pretty minimal, and the non-medical scientific community was sort of not really represented at these meetings. So I remember the very first one, apart from the fact there were some quite lively discussions around aspects of certain therapeutics, which were very much at the fore in 2006, was the involvement of everybody. And obviously my being in the clinic myself and having a lot to do with the patient community, this was very much sort of sat very well with me, because that's something I've always liked, but I never thought it could work, if I'm honest with you, because I think trying to bridge that gap between how scientists talk to each other, how clinicians talk to each other, and then how that can be accessible to the patient and other specialties, I think that was going to be tricky. But actually it proved to be very successful. And I think the people who found it most difficult, I would say in the beginning, were the clinicians, actually. I would think, even though they spend all their time with the patient community, they're not used to them being there listening to them talk about the subjects of research. So over the years, I've obviously, as you know, become a massive fan of this as an approach. I still think it's, of all the meetings I go to, it's by far the best meeting one attends. I mean, you can have tiny workshops around small problems, around solving a common problem, which I love. But actually, as a meeting as a whole, this is by far the best meeting. And it is because it introduces everybody to everybody else who's got some skin in the game with Parkinson's. And I think those dialogues are what make it exciting. They make it relevant. And certainly for the junior people coming up, it's a real eye opener. I mean, I'm used, as I say, to seeing lots of people with Parkinson's. So I've seen them from when they're diagnosed, when they've got more advanced disease. But for a lot of people, they very rarely encounter someone with that condition. And actually to see the different types of patients, the different standpoints they have, the different comments they have, is incredibly, I think, moving and inspiring to people who come. But also, I think it opens up discussions which we don't necessarily have, because we think we know about things which we don't, because the people with Parkinson's know more than we do about it, because they're having to live with it. So for me, it's how much does it change things? Well, I think it just confirmed what I always thought, but I wasn't sure it could work, but it has. And actually, as time has gone on, what's become quite clear in the world of science and clinical research is the patient voice is now very much more respected and very much more expected. And I think the WPC was years ahead of that in delivering that as a message.
I love that. Thank you so much. I thought it was interesting, Roger. One of the things you said, it's like all the stakeholders. I think people forget that, people always look at the fact that the WPC brought people with Parkinson's to the table, but it wasn't just people with Parkinson's. It was also the non-physician clinicians.
Yeah.
So the nurse, PT, OT, speech, social work, that whole community of clinicians who were deeply caring for people with Parkinson's, they also weren't attending those meetings, right, years ago. And we created a space for them as well. I think people forget that. They just talk about the patient inclusion, but it wasn't just the patient inclusion that made it unique. It was really everybody.
And the fact that you've maintained that. And so, I think all of the sessions, they tend to have all of these different perspectives on it. And, I did a clinic this morning. And I think one of the things in medicine is if someone has a problem, there must be a tablet that helps it. But actually what I was saying this morning is, exercise is very important. Sleep's very important. Getting different types of therapy is very important. It's not all about take another tablet or take a different tablet. So I think, and that's not easy to discuss if you're not aware of what's out there, really.
Yeah.
Right. And this, I think, leads us into another concept called the unconference, which many of us love. What lies in that term is what happens in between all the presentations from the main stage to the round tables to some people, and I'm actually one of them, goes to a conference, and then we spend more time outside the main hall than inside. We spend more time chit-chatting over a cup of coffee or in the evening a glass of wine with someone, rather than sitting in on the formal program. Which do you find most valuable, Roger?
Well, so I would say, so what do I think about? I think there's a lot of outside of the meeting hall. There's a lot that goes on. I think each has its own value. So I think big lectures summarizing fields I find extremely helpful because I don't have time to necessarily look through everything that's been going on. So I find those very informative, but that's very much I'm just receiving information. One of the things I've always loved is these little roundtable discussions. So I love sitting with a group of people from very different backgrounds, perhaps a dozen people, to chat about something for an hour and a half. I think that's terrific. I love those sort of things because there's nothing scripted. You never know where it's going to go. It's very interesting. It's very stimulating. And then I think conversations just bumping into people. The problem I have at the WPC, if I'm honest, is that Eli has me doing so many things that I'm normally running from one to the other. So I can't really have long conversations with people because I'm always late for whatever I'm supposed to be doing next. But I think it's the meeting and then it's connecting with people that's very important. And it's got a long history, this type of thing. So here in Cambridge, there's a very famous building called the Laboratory of Molecular Biology, which was set up
The
after
what?
the Laboratory of Molecular Biology, LMB. So it was set up probably in the late 1940s, still going. And I think it's had 17 Nobel laureates. So it's the most successful research institute probably in the world. And a lot of people think the success of that building is the tea room.
Right.
Because it's the conversations that people have in the informal discussing a problem. And I know it's different to the WPC, but it makes the point that I think it's often these conversations, the more intimate conversations where people are exchanging things, where actually real information, connection and things take place. But I would hate for people to think the WPC is all about having a chat in the corridor because no one will then turn up to any of the other aspects of it. So it is, each brings its own advantage, but I think it's a wonderful experience just bumping into people and having a chat to them about things.
Yes.
And that's also, the inclusivity is also throughout the whole meeting. So the fact anyone can ask questions, and more recently we've had this idea, you have the capability rather to text questions in, means you get questions from everybody as well. So the conversations and the discussions are much wider ranging than they would be at a lot of meetings.
Right.
It's true. I think one thing Edgar actually told me, Roger, and I thought I'd share this with you because I think it was really, for me, really great to hear Edgar say this. When I asked Edgar, what do you like about the WPC? Why did you apply to be an ambassador? One of the things Edgar said was, it's the first time I've been to a meeting where the speakers don't run up onto the stage, plug in their thumb drive, give their talk, and then run away.
Yeah.
And he's like, they actually hang out. Like, I get to talk to them and they talk back to me. Like, they actually communicate with me. They're not just there to give a talk and run away. And partly that's because the model of the meeting is, I won't fly anybody in for one talk. They're always stuck for multiple tasks. So they can't completely leave because I have them doing multiple things, which I think is a smart, in a way.
Yeah.
I mean, in the beginning, we did that because we were thinking to be financially careful and make sure the meeting was financially viable by not being careful. But in the end, I think that has yielded a really great opportunity because people do stick around. They're not just rushing in and flying out. And I love that for Edgar, that was something he really deeply impacted you. And I think that is something that the WPC does. Maybe people come and they know I'm here for the week or I'm here for 3 or 4 days. So I might as well just slow down, have these conversations and really, talk to people.
Yeah. I think
Yes,
it's the accessibility. So everyone's accessible. I think you can talk to people. And I think that makes everyone feel as though they've got a voice to be heard rather than you're just this anonymous person in the audience. I think one of the things which has definitely also been helpful, I think, going forward is to slightly reduce the density of the meeting, which I know in the past, because we were so keen to convey so much and it only happened every 3 years. And I think sometimes found the intensity of that was a bit, which comes back to Edgar's point, the unconference conversations, there's more, well, in Phoenix, there'll be more opportunity for that.
Yeah. And it's totally right what Eli said. What I experienced deeply in Barcelona was you walk past a cafe or restaurant, something, and there is this table with 4 or 5 people, and all of a sudden one of them is saying, "Oh, hi, Edgar, come over, join us. We're already here." And I mean, it could be anyone with a much fancier title than what I ever had. And they're inviting me to sit at their table. I mean, they're really including everyone.
Yeah.
And there is always room for one more. So we're taking the next table, pulling that up to the one we had already, taking another table, and then people are splitting off again. But everyone is really very inclusive. And as you
It is.
say,
It's like a family.
it is really. And it is like then saying, did you hear the speech this morning by so-and-so? And what do you think? And I say, oh, no, that was when I was outside having a coffee with. But then we're sharing and cross-sharing and sharing again. And it really is. Plus the fact that there are no VIP dinners behind closed doors, which is also a thing that happens at many other congresses, is they take the assumed 10 most important people and pull them into a VIP dinner behind closed doors. That does not happen with the WPC. It's
Well, not that we tell you, Edgar.
no, exactly.
Yes, it's true. It's true.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So Roger, if you you interact with so many people in the field, and if junior researchers, junior clinicians, junior folks are coming up to you and they're saying, "Oh, I'm going to go to the WPC in Phoenix in 2026." What are your tips? Any advice from, we always have tips for people with Parkinson's, but what are your tips as a researcher and a neuroscientist, a clinician? What are your tips for junior researchers and clinicians when they're going to the WPC? Any advice?
I think first of all, just enjoy the atmosphere. So it will be like nothing else. So if you've never been to it, you won't know quite how different it is. So I think, and picking up on Edgar's point, this is very inclusive. So you won't arrive and feel intimidated by the fact there's them and us. Everyone's the same and treated the same. So there's a sort of equity of position within it, which I love. I think the things I think I enjoy the most and would recommend people to do, I think the plenary sessions are fantastic because they cover a topic from different perspectives. And I think getting not just the sort of latest science and the latest clinical, but the non-science, non-clinical patient perspective or something else, I think is very good. I also think one of the ways you can understand a field is by going to one of the specialist topics which you're supposed to know about. Well, this is what I do anyway, and I don't really know that much about it, and I find it a bit confusing. And because they say we're making it accessible to the patient community, you go along and say, well, it's good because they're making it accessible to them, and you sit down and think there's a good chance I might actually understand this for once in my life. So it's quite a good way of getting to understand things without feeling as though you should have some incredible knowledge before you arrive. And I think experience things that you're not would normally not do. So I always remember the very first one I went to, Andrew Lee's, great British neurologist. He was really keen to go off and do music therapy and dance therapy. And I mean, you're never going to go to a meeting where someone's going to offer you that. So I mean, you can expose yourself to disciplines and things that you wouldn't normally see. So I mean, for me, the tip is I would go and enjoy the whole thing. I would do the plenaries. I would pick the sessions which are on the areas which I'm interested in, and sometimes areas which I think I should be interested in, but have always been intimidated by the science, and then explore things which you would not explore anywhere else.
I love that. That's great advice. You made me laugh because in 2010, I remember distinctly in 2010, standing in the exhibit hall, and Marie-Françoise Chasselet, our former president at the WPC, and Beate Ritz, a well-known researcher from California, they came up to me and I said, how are you doing? And they said, oh, it's great. We just saw a session by one of our colleagues. We never totally understood exactly what he was doing, but we just saw his talk, and now we actually understand what his research is about. And I thought, oh my gosh, you two didn't really understand it. And they're like, oh, he gave such a comprehensive talk because he was speaking to a broad audience. It's the first time we actually truly understood what he was doing. And I won't give away who it was because that might be too much information, but I just thought that was really funny. And it tracks with what you just said exactly. It's really interesting.
Yeah, because I think you have to make it accessible to everyone, and you're not showing off. I think that's the other thing. So sometimes meetings, people make it, can show off a bit with their talks, whereas here it is about communication and information.
And take it from another side. Say that we met on the street, Roger, and we start talking, and you're saying, "Oh, I'm so excited about the upcoming Congress," and I say, "What is the one compelling argument why I should go to the Congress? I've never been to one of those. You've been to a handful. What is the one reason that I should go as well? Not the three
Because you will learn
reasons
so
or the
much.
5 best or whatever, but the one that makes me run off and secure my air tickets."
Because I don't think you will ever can ever experience. I mean, it's such a unique experience because you will immerse yourself for 3 days or 4 days in this whole field. You will see it from every possible perspective. You'll meet everybody from different backgrounds and different viewpoints and different stages in their journey with Parkinson's. It will be, a sort of immersive experience that you will never, ever get anywhere else. So it is a completely unique opportunity to be informed, to make new friends, and to basically immerse yourself in that whole area, I think. And I think it's a wonderful.
Right.
That's what I would say to them.
Excellent.
Another question, a bit more personal, and one that maybe is not tied into the program as such. If you took the elevator and all of a sudden you're stuck between 2 floors, who would you want to be stuck with?
This is your chance, Roger, living or dead.
Well, in terms of what? In terms of people in the world?
Yeah.
Or people in the Parkinson's world?
People in the world.
Tell us about yourself. Who would you be stuck with? And it could be living or dead. This gives you an opportunity to have a conversation with someone you may not have ever had a chance to have a conversation with. Who would you want to be stuck with?
But not related to Parkinson's or related to Parkinson's?
Not necessarily. Could be, could not be.
Okay, so people I would love to talk to. I'd love to talk to Barack Obama.
Right.
I feel I could have a very good conversation with him. The late Jimmy Carter again. I would very much have enjoyed a conversation. So I know I'm in America, so I'm thinking the elevator may have American presidents in it. I would be very interested to talk to James Parkinson.
Mm-hmm.
Be very interested to know, because he was such an extraordinary man. Because he had, Parkinson's, I mean, the clinical part was only a small part of his incredibly, interesting life. I mean, there are so many people, but those are the ones. And then I think other people I'd be very interested to talk to. I would be very interested in some of the sort of pioneers of neuroscience. So I'd love to meet the people who, let's say someone like Cajal, who's the Spanish neuroanatomist who came up with nerve cells, and Sherrington, who was the first person to describe connections with it. I would love to talk to people about that because I love history, and I'd love to understand the history and what the world was like, and then how it came about after that. And then, well, there's a big lift now because I guess you've got 12 people.
It's getting to be
the packed list. I have one more personal question on this, Roger. I know you love history and you love reading. What are you reading right now?
So I am just gripped by Robert Harris's book called Ghost, which is about a British Prime Minister, Adam Lang, who's just retired, and he's the ghostwriter for this. And before that, I finished a Sebastian Faulks book on the Fool's Alphabet. And the next I'm going to read is Huckleberry Finn, because there's another book that's recently been written from another perspective in Huckleberry Finn. But I thought I ought to read Huckleberry Finn before, because last year I read David Copperfield, but before I read David Copperfield so I could read Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver, who I just absolutely adore.
I was just advised to read Demon Copperhead, but I mean to do exactly what you just did. Someone said, go back and read David Copperfield before you read this.
I mean, it's quite a major undertaking because neither of those books are short.
Yeah. Following up on books to read, and since you mentioned Jimmy Carter, I just remember that many years back, I think that it was when he was running for election, or it could be right after he won the election, he actually published his autobiography called Why Not the Best?
Yeah.
And the story behind the title is that he was doing the Naval Academy, I think it was, or a military academy anyways, and he had an exam, and he comes home and his grandfather is sitting there, and the grandfather says, "So how did it go today?" And he says, I'm not so sure. I may not, have hit the point exactly. And the grandfather says, "Well, did you do your best?" And he says, "I'm not sure, actually." And the grandfather says, "Why not the best?"
Yeah. Yeah. But there's so many great stories about Jimmy Carter, because there was one when he was running for president where apparently he phoned up his mum and said, "I'm going to run for president." She said, "That's lovely, dear. President of what?" And the house he lived in was it's a 2-bedroom house that he lived in his whole life. I mean, the security cars outside were worth infinitely more than the house he lived in.
So brilliant. What a humble person. Yeah. What an amazing man.
Yeah.
And a little further on the personal side, since we mentioned music hits in the beginning of this talk, we now covered some 8 or 10 books to read. Which music do you think would you advise people to listen to when they're done with this podcast and say, "Oh, now I need to have some good music on"?
Well, depends what mood I'm in, really. I mean, Max Richter is someone I've got into quite recently. I like Max Richter, and he's done the 4 Seasons, which was in The Crown, if people listen to that. I think if you want something that's inspiring, then personally I love Mahler symphonies. I think Beethoven, absolutely extraordinary for a man of his age. So Beethoven's Ninth I would definitely go for. I think the Bach violin partitas and sonatas, extraordinary what you can make from one instrument. I mean, I can't play anything. I'm completely hopeless on that, but I love so I love classical music. Feeling Good, I think Muse do a version of that. I think that pretty pumps you up if you wanted something to get you going. So yeah, I mean, I guess those would be the things I'd go for. I mean, if you do all the classical, that will see you through to the next podcast.
Good. I think we're close to wrapping up here. Is there something we haven't covered so far that you would like to mention?
No, I think I would just encourage everyone to come. I cannot emphasize enough the unique and wonderful nature of the WPC. You will never be disappointed. I mean, I've no idea what Phoenix, Arizona is like. I've never been there, but I've been to, I don't know how many I've been to. I've been to, what is it, 6, is it, or 7 WPC meetings. They've all been different and they've all been wonderful. And I look back on them with such fond memories. And the fact that every 3 years is a great way to catch up with people over that period of time. So it's terrific. And in a world which is a bit depressing at the moment, when there are lots of things going, it is a very, very uplifting experience.
Hear, hear.
Hear, hear.
Amazing.
So
Thank you so much.
It is actually time to rush off and book my tickets to Phoenix.
Absolutely, yeah. And take a few friends with you.
Absolutely. Bring the whole clan.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Roger, for making time to talk to us today on this Hear podcast as we count down the months to Phoenix, Arizona and the WPC 2026.
Great.
Thank you.
Lovely chatting.
Thank you for joining the Hear Parkinson's podcast. If you would like to experience the next World Parkinson Congress for yourself, to feel and see the change in real time, save the date to join us from May 24th to the 27th, 2026 in Phoenix, Arizona. Learn more at WPC2026.org. This podcast series is made possible with support from BlueRock Therapeutics.